Hello and welcome to the Inner Game of Entrepreneurship podcast. I'm your host, Cera, and I am so excited today. This is actually the first guest we've had since we changed the name of the show. I'm so thrilled. Today on the pod, we have wildlife artist and gallery owner James Corwin. James is quickly becoming the preeminent wildlife artist of our time. Represented by galleries nationwide, including his own Corwin Galleries, his work is purchased nationally and internationally through both private and corporate collections. In his work, he brings the beauty of nature to you, created as a reflection of how he sees the world and to preserve its fragility by giving back. He gathers his inspiration and references from frequent travels around the world. By providing the utmost quality and innovation in his paintings, he aims to create a sustaining legacy of integrity and loyalty with his collectors, art, and conservation. He currently resides in Missoula, Montana, and I'm so excited to have James on the show today. When we had our pre-pod check-in, we realized we both share a mission, which is to kill off the starving artist trope. And I was so excited to get to bring y'all a professional painter, a professional visual artist, because I think that is one of the fields that I encounter artists who have the most limiting beliefs that this is not something you can make a living at. And so to have someone here to really share with you how he's doing it and how he has built his success is such a gift and such a treat. So James, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure.
Welcome. Okay,
Thank you.
let's get into it. Let's
Okay.
start with wait, I always like to ask people if you know your astrology. I like to know your sign.
Oh, yeah. I am Cancer. I'm in June 24th. I just had my birthday a week ago.
Happy birthday.
And thank you. Thank you.
You know
It's,
your moon and your rising too?
I did at one point. I'm so sorry. I forgot
I
because
love asking.
I had just thought about it the other day and I was going to look it up again and I forgot to do that because I am curious. It's interesting because I don't know, maybe other people relate to this when they think of their sign. Some aspects of it are me, and then others I'm like, I'm not like that.
That's where it helps to know your whole chart because then you can
That's right.
see more things.
Exactly.
Okay, I always
Yeah.
like to start there. So tell me about how you got into the work you're doing. When did you start painting? When did you decide that you were going to make it your career?
Yeah, it was a little later in life. People often think, oh, you probably were drawing as a little kid. Well, no, I didn't realize I could do art until I was a senior in high school, is when I took my first drawing class, painting class. And I suppose I had been more musically driven up until then, and also very passionate about business and entrepreneurship, and knowing that I wanted to own and start my own business out of school or college, and finding that I could paint really, I suppose, solidified the aspirations to go into being an artist. And because I could create a product and could sell it, but also create a lifestyle around this business that ultimately made it very desirable, such as working for myself, doing something creative that I loved every day, and being able to travel the world and gather inspiration and new ideas for new paintings.
Okay, so first of all, I love that you said later in life and then you said senior in high school.
I know,
I
I
thought you were going to be like, this was my second act. I changed careers at 30. It was like later in life, I was 18,
I
an
I
old
know.
man.
It's funny because people just assume, oh, you've been painting your whole life.
Right.
And that's when I have to realize, you know, later in life is certainly it was I was still young at the time, but it wasn't something I was doing in childhood.
Okay. What I think is really interesting about what you shared is that you, even at that age, had an interest in business and you were
Mhm.
interested in having your own business. And that I think is really special because maybe it was a benefit that you kind of realized you had a faculty and an interest in art a little older.
Mhm.
I tend to find that people who have been artistic and really interested in art their whole life, by the time they are in their late teens, have already kind of decided, well, I'm not good at math. Like business is not for me, math's not for
Mhm.
me, left brain stuff is not for me, and have already had many, many years of kind of maybe being supported for being talented, but then you're
Mhm.
starting to get the messages of, well, like, what are you going to do in college? Because that's not real. Like, that's not a real thing. So I think it's really maybe a blessing that you, first of all, had that entrepreneurial spirit already,
Mhm.
but maybe because you weren't doing art, people didn't have time to get worried that you were going to never have a real job.
That is such a good point and insight. I think my mom is a perfect example of that. She is an incredibly talented painter, and she was accepted into the New York Academy of Art, and she produced these incredible, yeah, paintings of people, portraits in high school. But her father said, you need to go into college and get a degree doing a real career, and you're not going to make any money being an artist. So she had to cancel her um, application or acceptance to that New York school, and she ultimately became a physical therapist. And while she continued painting a bit, she had a completely different career. And out of the discouragement of her parents at the time, and times are different now, and I think families are a little more open to their kids pursuing their own interests. So I certainly had parents that were very open to it, but they also did encourage me to get a degree from college, which I got in art. But I didn't learn how to paint from college. I learned through self teaching, and I knew in college that I didn't need to be here. I already knew what I was going to do. So the degree kind of felt a little not useless, but certainly not applicable to what I do now. But I have always had the feeling inside that I wanted to prove people wrong and break that trope of the starving artist, and not only just show myself, but yeah, show other people that you can be successful as an artist. Because I was seeing other artists doing it and being very successful, so I knew it was possible.
That's amazing. And I feel sad for your mom. And
I know.
yeah, she has much of like a much more typical artist trajectory experience even today of like
Mhm.
your parents being like, no, no, like it's great that you've been good at that your whole life, but now go pick something else, which I think only
Yeah.
artists have that, right? Only artists have, you're going
Yeah.
to be encouraged to excel in this thing your entire life and then drop it the second it's time for college. It's like,
Right.
I think of things that are like, oh, yeah, you should pursue that because it looks good on college applications, but that's not a career.
Right.
It's so weird. And so I guess what I'm curious about, I think another blessing is that you saw people being successful at it, because I think that's another
Mhm.
thing that people don't have. Like
Yeah.
that blocks people is like no expanders. I have no evidence that this is possible because I either have no immediate examples or for whatever reason haven't gone out to look for them. My
Yeah.
brain is kind of closed to seeing, well, this person's doing it, so I must be able to. So what
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
really special that you saw that and you were like, okay, well, why not me? If they can do it, why not me?
Right.
Which I think is the most valuable question anyone can ask. Why not me? Why can't I do it?
Exactly.
So where did you start with making it a career?
It is a long process. I started right off the bat. I
Okay, let me ask
began,
a different question. What did you charge
yes.
for your first painting?
Oh, like $20.
Right. I think people need to hear
Yeah.
that. That's important.
Yes, you start small. I started small. Right at even in high school, I started throwing up my paintings on Facebook to my family and friends that were following, and people would message me asking to buy in it. Seriously, it was like 20, $30 for a little oil painting. And I continued doing that in college. And then during the summer, I would do the farmers markets and the local art fairs and festivals, where I set up a little tent booth with a table, and I would paint these little individual canvas paintings that had little easels, and I would paint hundreds of them during the week and put out my table spread, and I'd sell them at $20 a pop. But it would be great because on any given Saturday, sell like 40, 50 of them, make 800, $1,000. And that was enough to then carry me through the week and then set up on another Saturday.
Okay, this is amazing. And I want to like break this down because you are
Mm-hmm.
saying it like, oh, this is what I did.
Mm-hmm.
But first of all, I think being willing to, there's two things, right? So some people are willing to sell their art for really cheap, but then they get
Mm-hmm.
stuck there and they don't think they're ever allowed to charge more for it or that people will buy more.
Yeah.
Some people are willing to sell their art for really cheap, but then in their head, they're like, well, I'm not a real artist or I'm not a professional. I sell little paintings here and there, but nothing's expensive. So they kind of dismiss themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So huge that, first of all, you were willing to do that. And taking that as proof that this will work, this is viable. I have proof of concept. People will buy from me. That's encouragement to keep going.
Yeah.
Then the
Mm-hmm.
other thing is saying, offhand, I was at farmers markets. That means you figured out how to get into farmers markets. You did an application with the
Yes.
city, right? You got a booth, you paid
Mm-hmm.
fees.
Oh
That's
yeah.
another place where I think people are like, oh, that would be cool to do. But then they stop
Mm-hmm.
themselves when it's time to like fill out the forms and pay
So
the money,
true.
get the table, invest in the like little tent thing so that you have some
Yeah.
shade.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you put money in up front and work in up
Yes.
front, even as a young person. So like get those opportunities and put yourself there. And that is really, I think
Yeah.
um it's that spirit of like, oh, if this is what it takes, then this is what I'm gonna do. Cool, no problem. I'll just do it,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to like, oh, well, in order to do that, I have to do all of these steps and I'm not gonna do that.
I've been investing in myself since the very start. I would split my income so that I would be paid and could pay my living expenses. And then whatever was left, I had left to reinvest in the business, whether that's buying the tent or show fees or framing and prints and just growing the business, marketing
You took
too.
it seriously
And
right from the beginning. You weren't like, oh, let me
mhm,
just dabble and see what I can do. You were like, this is the
right,
farmers market business is a business. The Facebook business is a
exactly.
business. What
Hmm.
do you think it is about you? Do you think there's like other personality traits? Is it something inborn? What do you think it is character-wise in you that made you take it so seriously right from the beginning? I think a lot of artists get into a place of like, I need other people to prove it to me before I take it seriously. They get in a weird catch 22 of like, well, if I was selling art, then I would believe I was a real artist and then I would take it seriously.
Yeah.
What do you think
Well,
is about you that made you take it seriously right from the beginning?
to be honest, that's taken a long time to get there and to take myself and my own art seriously. For so long, it seemed that I was in and out of feeling emotionally connected to what I was doing and often wondering if I should do something else and if I really had it in me to carry through in longevity. And even though I was selling and selling well, but then during some of those dry periods, it's like, oh, what am I doing? And why am I doing this? Maybe I should just get something stable. And then it would do well. And then I'd get swept up in the wave of it and it'd be all great. And I think for so many artists, it's very usual to go through that experience of the ups and downs and the good times and the dry times, and the ability to carry through and focus and not give up is what will set a successful artist apart from one that's perhaps still struggling, because it is so important to stay focused and not give up. And the reason I didn't give up is because I couldn't come up with a better idea or reason to do something else. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I would just wake up every day and do what I'm already familiar with doing.
This is so important. Like, first of all, thank you for admitting, right, that you have dry spells and that
Mhm.
during those dips, you had the very human thought of like, oh no, is this not going to work? Should I go get something else? Because I
Yeah.
think it's not just for artists. I think it's for all businesses. Like
Oh,
every
yeah.
business is going to have slow seasons, and those slow seasons are so painful
Yeah.
because it's so scary, right? It's not just like who am I as a creative? Do people like my work, right? When we're getting into our survival, can I pay my bills? Can I feed myself? Am
Mm-hmm.
I being self-indulgent? Am I being delusional? If I wait too long, am I going to really screw my life up? Like there's a lot on the line. It's very high stakes.
Yeah.
And being able to calm yourself and steady yourself and keep showing up and putting in the work day after day after day when a slow season can be months long, it
Mm-hmm.
could be a year long. Like you really can go through scary spells where you're like, oh, I just put all my living expenses on credit cards for a few months. Like it can get
Mm-hmm.
scary.
Oh, yeah.
And like you said, if you allow those dry spells to send you into like a tailspin of this isn't going to work, if you take it as proof it isn't going to work,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to follow a certain set of actions. Whereas if you're like, this is just a season, I'm going to get through it. There's still, even though I'm scared today, there's nothing else I'd rather do. That's what comes up
Yeah.
for me. Same thing is I'm like, well, do I want to do anything else? And I'm like, God, no. And I'm like, okay,
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
even if this is the scariest thing and every day I want to throw up because I don't know what's going to happen financially, I
Mm-hmm.
can't imagine doing anything else. Entrepreneurs
It's
are
true.
special people.
It really is, and it's not for everyone. I've learned that you have to really. Let me rephrase that. Anyone can be an entrepreneur and start a business. It's just what level of entrepreneurship do you want to exist in? How much do you really want to take on and grapple with on a daily basis, as far as running? Are you content running $1 million business versus a $100 million business? Is completely different. I don't think I am the entrepreneur to run $100 million business. After talking to plenty who do, it's just I just don't have that kind of capacity to handle the stresses on a daily basis. But going back to this point, I think during those challenging times, those were also the times of the greatest improvements in my business, because when I approach a dry spell or things slow down sales wise, it's because there's something that's not working well in the business, or something that could be changed and improved to work better, or introducing something new that when that thing slows down, there's another thing to uphold it in the business and carry it through. So those dry times are great times for innovation. So when artists are going through that, rather than see it as a time of despair and struggle and stress, see it as, okay, this is a, a light moment where I can begin working on new things in the business so that this doesn't happen again in the future.
Yeah, I think it's right about like responding to challenges with curiosity is like the most
Yeah.
essential thing, right? If we respond to challenges as like, this is it, I'm a failure. It's an on-off switch. Like I'm either good or I'm bad. I'm either on or I'm off.
Hmm.
And so if it's off,
Yeah.
then I am completely a failure and it's proof that nothing's ever going to work. Like we can take it into this really disastrous place. But if we do
Hmm.
it with curiosity, that's where things open up. And you know, I think this is true in everything all the time. I am a dancer, like my art is all physical and like all the time I talk about how like you learn the most from the classes where you crash and burn. Like it
Yeah.
feels great to have classes
Ooh.
where everything's easy and you do the best. That's good for the ego and we should have those. It's great to go to a beginning class and be the best dancer in the room and be like, "Okay, I'm still the shit." But then
Yes.
you're not growing. Like we need that too. Like I need
Mhm.
affirmation. I need to reassure myself, but I'm not growing. I'm growing in the classes where I cry because it's so hard. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh my God, cannot do this. That's where growth that because that's where you bump up against your edges. That's where you're seeing, oh, here's where I still have room to grow. Here's where I can get stronger. Here's where I can get faster. Here's where I can refine things. I also think slow spells in our business and in our art are illuminating places where we might have things that are off in our emotions, in our personal
Mhm.
life, right? Anything that's going on in you is going to reflect itself in your art. It's going to reflect itself in your business. And so it's a chance to get really sober with yourself and like kind of take that 30,000 foot view and be like, okay, what's going on right now? Where am I at? Am I not inspired right now because I'm not filling my own cup? Do I need to travel? Do I need to get a new perspective? Am
Mhm.
I like slacking off too much, watching too much TV, doing too much scrolling? Am I like not setting boundaries in my relationships? Like, where am I off? And we really have such a beautiful mirror as artists and as entrepreneurs. That's what it can be, right? Like any other relationship in your life, it's this beautiful mirror of what's really going on with you. And when you're off, how can you adjust and get back on track? And
Mhm.
you always have the biggest up level after one of those periods.
It's so true. I feel like more and more mindset is incredibly important and intention of thought. There are too many times where things get slow and I pull back into that, 30,000 foot view and look and realize, wow, my thoughts are aligned with abundance. I'm thinking in a scarcity, and I began to shift my thinking and my whole being there at the easel to one of abundance, because there is any no lacking in the business. It is, so much of it is in my brain, and I begin to shift that perspective, and it makes such a big difference. All of a sudden, people start calling for buying art, and orders increase online, and I get more excited about the business and the art, and that energy is channeled through, and the customers I talk to and the social media posts I create. And it's so easy to just, I don't know, slip into these little ruts and then realize, wait, everything is in a way correlated with how I'm coming to my business every single day from an intention standpoint and an energy. And by shifting that, it can really shift the whole energy of the business. It's amazing. It's
100%, because you are
very
the engine
interesting.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always like to pull things into the body, right? Because the mindset is connected, right? It's all
Hmm.
together.
Yeah.
And the thoughts that we're thinking are affecting our nervous system and vice versa. And I think that we talked about like entrepreneurs are special people and being able to sustain forward motion during dry spells and to be even able to wrangle your thoughts. requires
Mhm.
you to have a pretty expanded window of tolerance in your nervous system for the unknown and for discomfort. Like, I
Mhm.
think I am not a naturally risk tolerant person. Like, a lot of
Right.
entrepreneurs rank really high for risk tolerance. I am a pretty risk averse person. I'm a Taurus. I'm like, nope, it has to be practical, it has to make sense. Like, I'm not an adrenaline seeker. I will not gamble. Like, I am not a risk tolerant individual. And so I have had to do a lot of inner work on my body, on my nervous system
Yeah.
for expanding my window of tolerance for risk. Because when I'm in those down spells, I go into a body place of anxiety of like, oh no, this isn't going to work. And once my body's in anxiety, frontal lobe is shut off. We go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn. We go into like the scarcity thoughts of like, oh my God, it's going to be really bad. Our like, right, we go into a body place that can be really shut down. We have to get our body even regulated and calm enough to get that frontal lobe turned back on to think about our thinking, right? Like it's a special
Yeah.
thing to be able to think about your thinking. Like we have this gift to be able to be like, oh, my thoughts right now are taking me into a bad place. I need to wrangle my thoughts. And we can't even get there until we get like calm in our body. And what that kind of made me think as you were talking about abundance is that one of the beautiful things for your work is that because you work in nature, just to go out and like be in your subject matter, it's going to regulate your nervous system. It's going to help you calm down. It's going to tap you back into abundance. Like for me, it's like I need to go to the beach. I need to get toes in
Oh,
sand.
that sounds
Whenever I'm like
nice.
scared, right? When you're in scarcity, looking for what's abundant is like the quickest way out. Like just looking around, right? Like I'm looking out my window right now. There is no scarcity of leaves on the
Yep.
street right now, global warming. But like, if I go to the beach, I'm like, okay, there's no scarcity in grains of sand in the world. Like there's a complete abundance of this. There's a complete abundance of breeze. It like really helps you tap back into like I am part of a natural world of abundance. And so
I
how do you
love that.
think that your own subject matter helps to regulate you and keep you in that flow?
Sorry, what's the question?
Like how do you feel like your own subject matter helps you regulate when you're in those like scary places? Like what do you do with your art? Where do you go?
Mm. Yeah, I people often ask, how do you come up with your ideas? And some of it is through meditation. I just sit and I revisit nature and places that I've been. When I'm out in nature hiking, which I love to do, I'm observing. I'm not always taking photos. Most of my paintings aren't from photos I've taken, they're from something I create in my mind through sitting in stillness and just thinking. And I'll think if I want to paint, a raven, for example, I'll ponder on that for a while, but then just allow whatever comes up and remembering times when I saw ravens in Joshua Tree. And also the feeling of a raven is both powerful and kind of mysterious and otherworldly in a way of how they're um, shown in media. And I don't know, just the pairing of a raven with a Joshua tree, because the Joshua trees are also very unusual and alien-like, just seemed like such a interesting idea and something people probably haven't seen before. And that's how a painting like this is born. And then I began to craft it in Photoshop and moving all the elements around and changing colors and trying to recreate this image that I'm imagining in my mind, but mostly what I'm feeling, what I want the viewer to feel from seeing the painting. And once I have that, that becomes what I paint on canvas.
That's so cool. So I want to get back into your like career trajectory. At
Mhm.
what point did we go from farmers market either into showing in galleries or I'm going to open my own gallery? Which one of those happened first?
Oh, showing in galleries, which even came a little later. It's hard for artists to get into galleries It's still hard for me to get into galleries, and even owning a gallery, it's so hard to tell artists no because I really want to be inclusive of all artists and bring in, give them opportunities to show their work, but I'm not able to accept everyone. So seeing it from both sides has been really interesting. But coming out of farmers markets, I would do art shows that galleries often had, which were um, just general, open to the public, so any artist could submit to those shows. Eventually, I did get some art into galleries, but was still mostly doing shows. And those farmers markets and art festivals morphed more into traveling shows. So there's art shows that go on that are a bit more upscale. I'm sure you've probably been to some of them. And I was able to show better work and more expensive work and start moving the pricing up into the thousands. And then with galleries and doing commissions for people, really began, creating more stability there. It wasn't, the gallery was born out of a necessity for space rather than an interest in actually owning a gallery. I had a house here in Montana where in my home we had 4 bedrooms, and three of the 4 bedrooms became studio space and employee offices, and the garage was filled with inventory. So by this time I had a team of people working for me, and we were all coming into my house every day working, and it just wasn't a house anymore. So I needed to get a public space, and that there's this great building that I'm in right now that came on the market in downtown Hamilton, Montana. So I was able to buy the building because it had the workspace for us, but also it made sense to me that it would have a retail component to it since I'm in the business of selling things. So that's how the gallery was born, and we were all working in here. But I actually live an hour away now and still have my staff running the gallery, but I work back at home again.
I love that. Okay, wait, I want to get really granular because I think for an
Yeah.
artist who is, maybe not hasn't maybe gone all in on making this their career yet, the idea of
Mhm.
having a team might seem like really far away. So what I would love
Mhm.
to know is like, who is the first team member that you hired and what did they do? And what point were you at financially in the business when you were like, okay, I'm going to bring somebody in to do this? And then like, who is the next person? Like, what were the roles that you started to feel a need for and hire for?
Yeah. I would pay myself a salary. I forget what that amount was at the time, but it was enough to pay for my living expenses, though I wasn't living any sort of extravagant life. It's just enough to pay the mortgage and food and health insurance.
I want to also
um,
just remind everyone he lives in Montana. To all my
yes,
LA and New York City listeners, this might be
yes,
different for
so
you.
true. I know. I think my mortgage was like 1,400, and my food was probably like
Uh,
400. So it was like
yeah,
under 3,000 a month.
yeah.
So I know it's totally different depending on where you
We
live.
just have to say, no, it's important to say that, right? Because like people are like, oh my God, pay my mortgage. I live in Los Angeles. Like,
I know, I know, I know. So I think, yeah, at the time, whatever that was, under 50,000 a year. So anything beyond that, I wanted to apply to growing the business, and found that I was doing a lot of business admin work on the computer. Really, it's so important for artists to be omnipresent and get their work out into the marketplace on all the platforms, Amazon, Etsy, a website. Yeah, at eBay, there's so many resources available to selling your art, and you should be on all of them, and you should be marketing all of them. But that takes considerable time and
Where were
time
you
away
marketing
from the,
them?
what's that?
Where were you marketing the platforms?
Oh, just running ads on all the
On-
platforms to
Okay.
drive traffic to those listings. Otherwise, there's just so much noise and competition. It's hard for people to land on your art and
Okay.
then, buy. So it's, we can get into the marketing because it's incredibly important. It has been for my success. But all that takes time away from painting,
Right.
and that's also the biggest moneymaker is creating new art. So as soon as I was able to hire somebody on a salary to come in and offload some of that, I did, and it then opens up more time for painting. So then I'm producing more paintings, and um, back then I had also brought in backup artists to help lay in the underpaintings too, so that she's starting one of the paintings and I'm finishing and detailing. So there's two paintings being created at once.
Okay,
So
wait, I
the
want to
output
pause.
is
We got
more.
to pause right there because
Yeah.
I feel like that's a place that a lot of people would get into maybe some possessiveness and be like, no, only I can do the painting part. No one else is allowed to do any of the work.
I
And
know.
so did
I
you
was
have to
waiting
go
for
through
this.
any of that? Or were you just like, no, it's cool?
It's so cool. I just find somebody who can see color the way I see color. That's the most important. And then I draw out the whole painting so it's all mapped out. And then the underpainting is pretty simple and just laying down the colors, the values. But for it to come to my easel and for me to see the same colors that the backup assistant artist saw is most important.
Okay.
Um,
I want to get even more granular. So
yeah.
the first person you hired was the admin,
Hmm.
computer stuff, marketing stuff. Were they doing marketing too or just admin?
Yes, marketing, getting me into additional galleries, calling other galleries, calling furniture stores to get my prints into different stores, boutiques, gift stores, and to wholesale those as well. To start fulfilling orders, answering emails,
Okay.
also getting all my art up onto Amazon and all those sites because it takes a long time to just even build out one product listing
So how many hours did you employ this person for and how much were you
full
paying them?
time.
Full time.
And I think it was starting like 17 an hour at the time.
And then it seems like, based on the tasks you handed them,
Hmm.
that they would be bringing a lot of value into the business because now they've expanded how many sales you're getting by getting those
Yeah.
listings going and freeing you up to create more. So at what
Hmm.
point did you bring in backup artist and did you bring that person in full time?
I did, yes. Yeah. It seemed to come pretty within a year
Okay.
of having the assistant. And I don't have the backup artist anymore, but I still have the assistants, and they're all still doing the same work.
Yeah.
I have somebody on contract as the backup artist now, so they're not full time. But um, I'm trying to think back to timeline because if you hire your first person to buy back your time, which is
Hmm.
incredibly important, the whole goal is to get more time to create more income for yourself through painting to produce more product, but also for that assistant to generate more sales and income, hopefully beyond their salary.
Right.
And that's what we were achieving, which is why there was more income coming into the business to be able to then hire that second person.
Amazing. And then where did you go from there? Did you bring on another one?
Yes. Well, then that's when we each the three bedrooms we each had. I had my studio, they had their studio, and then the backup studio or the office, and so that's when we moved into the building, but then found neither the three of us wanted to actually run the front desk of the gallery. So that's when the third person came in to
Got it.
run the front desk.
Amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
then was there another one?
Um, Eventually, yes, when I opened a second gallery,
Okay.
but I ran the second gallery for a year and realized I didn't need a second gallery to uh, feel fulfilled.
Yes.
Yeah.
What an important thing, right? To try something and be like, no, that's a big deal.
Everything, it seems really exciting and good. And I had been running this gallery from afar for a year and really wanted to try opening another gallery in another state and also manage it and run it afar. But again, all these things, they take a little bits of time away from the easel and for it to really get its legs. And it all the that's why I was to like running $100 million business. It's all the little micro things and the managing that just take their toll. It was just a lot to think about and coordinate on a daily basis because I'm painting, but I'm also have my headset in. I'm talking to my employees all day long, strategizing and, delegating and working on tasks. Meanwhile, I'm painting, and it's just, I just, it was enormously stressful.
Yeah. Taking you away from how you wanted to work. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that it's really valuable and important to be willing to be honest about the size of business that you really want. Like you said earlier, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved that your examples were $1 million versus $100 million. Because I think for most artists, like even starting with six figures would be like, oh my God, could I do that? So
Oh,
like,
definitely can.
yeah, it's like think big, everybody. But in business, there is, and in capitalism, there's this
Mm-hmm.
assumption that like growth for growth's sake is always the goal. You
Yes.
should always want to
Yes.
expand and you should always want to have a bigger business. And like in
Yep.
the coaching world, there's such this push toward like, okay, when are you going to hit your first 10K months? When are you going to hit your first annual six figures? And then your first, multi six figures, and then your first seven, and then your first 10, right? Like there's this
Yeah.
push. And there's not a lot of stopping to be like, what is the lifestyle you want to have?
Oh, amen.
What is the life you want to live? And like, why do you need to make that much money? If you
Mhm.
can be happy and cover all of your expenses and save for retirement and make the impact that you want to make with your work and feel good and have the kind of days you want to have at this level of money, why
Yeah.
do you need to go past that? We really don't. And I think that
Mhm.
it takes a lot of self awareness and honesty and like alignment. And I think a dedication to like, I want to enjoy my days, to
Yeah.
being willing to be like, okay, I thought maybe I wanted this. I tried it out. And I'm not going to be embarrassed if I backtrack it. I'm not
Hmm.
failing. I'm just like, oh, I could do this. I don't want to. I don't like how this feels. Okay, that's too big. Walk it back. Like that takes a lot of bravery in the business world because there is such an assumption that endless expansion is the goal.
You said that so well. And that's exactly what I have been discovering this year. And it's been so, so enlightening. And thank you so much for sharing all that. Because it is so true. I've been asking myself those same questions. Why are we growing for growth's sake? And I have found so much more happiness in enjoying the lifestyle. And because where I'm at was where I dreamed to be, 4 or 5 years ago, and would have given anything to be there and dreamt of that. And so here I am. And now I'm like, oh, I got to do this and this and this. And it's just, it never ends. And I found so much more joy in creating the art, just being in it every day, but also just being nurturing these relationships with my customers, my collectors, and just being so much more present for them, and not thinking, months and years ahead, but just thinking about the next moment ahead.
Yeah. I think that satisfaction and like embracing satisfaction as a benchmark is so countercultural in capitalism and in business to be like, oh, my goal isn't to constantly be like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Like you turn into
Yeah,
this little goblin, I'm like, no, and my goal is
really.
satisfaction. I want to look around and be like, I'm actually really satisfied with this
Yes.
moment, with how this feels, with the size we're at right now. I
Yeah.
got like people I know who have
So
bought
true.
really big properties and really big houses because they thought that's what
Yeah.
they wanted. And within like a year, they were like, oh, I'm actually downsizing into a condo. And I'm like,
Good.
I realized I didn't want this. I thought I would like it, but like, why do I have all these rooms that no one's in that I have to clean? I don't
Yeah.
like this.
It's so true. It's so
Yeah.
true.
It's okay to just be like, oh, I'm actually so much. And sometimes you need to experience it to have that friction
Mhm.
of like, oh, nope, that was too far. Let me walk it back.
I know. I know. Yeah.
This
And
is so beautiful. So, oh my gosh, it's been an hour. And I feel like I could talk to you for 100 years. I feel
I
like
know, me
we're
too.
getting started. So I think I would like to have one quick detour because you offered it to talk a little bit about marketing for visual artists and it is so important and how you approach that and what you would recommend to an artist about how they focus on their marketing. Like what should people be focused on? What should they be doing?
Yeah. It's so important and it's so underutilized by artists. And maybe I should preface saying I understand that it's scary and it's hard to allocate any leftover dollars that you have towards marketing because it does seem so much like a shot in the dark. You're kind of throwing out money to see like what sticks and if you can, buy a customer and or get somebody to your website. And but it does work and it does take time, but capital should most definitely be allocated towards marketing constantly. And what's really worked well for me, and it still does, is Facebook ads, running Facebook ads. And I don't see a lot of artists doing it. So I still think the market share is pretty good for attracting new buyers to your website. And I recently brought on an agency to run my ads, but I was doing them all myself for over a decade. So you can easily learn how to build an ad by watching tutorials on YouTube or buying a class on Udemy. And you have good images of your art. You have your website. You need to have a system for people to shop that art and check out and buy it. Or you can direct people to Etsy, for example, if you have that set up.
Shopify.
But
There's so many
yes,
tools
I
now.
love
We're like,
Shopify. That's what I use.
we're in a great
But
time for all the online tools. It can be very easy.
oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Probably even more easy with AI. And you can create an ad in like 10 minutes, write good copy, have AI write you a good copy that converts or gets people interested in your art, create a target audience and run it at $5 a day. And I promise you, it will drive traffic to your business and start increasing sales. It just, it takes finesse, but it also takes commitment. And, but it's important.
One more thing I want to touch on before we start to wrap
Mhm.
is as we've been talking, I've been thinking about all of the like common objections artists have to like why this wouldn't work for me.
Yeah.
While I did mention that like the benefit of being in Montana or someplace like that in terms of monthly living expenses, the downside is I think so many artists believe they have to be in an LA or a New York or a Miami to make money as an artist. And so
Right.
highlighting that like owning a gallery and having a successful business in a place that's not considered a big art mecca.
Yeah.
Talk about
Yeah.
that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, Hamilton's tiny. I think the population here is like a little over 5,000 people. So it's certainly not a destination for art or even tourism. It just happens to be here because I lived here. And I did try opening it. I opened a gallery in Aspen, Colorado, which is high tourism, high money. And so I got to experience that end of it too. But owning a gallery, I don't even recommend artists do that. Just to start is getting eyes on your art. And that's the most important thing. And that can be through marketing, but that can be through doing these different shows. And if you're in LA or New York, there's so many different opportunities to show your work. But if you have higher living expenses, you just have to backtrack and do the math and say, okay, I need to make an extra $2,000 a month. We'll divide that by, 50 people. And what could I teach, 50 people to do for $40? And that could be an art class. And I'm sure there's 50 people in LA who would sign up for your art class and pay $40 a ticket. So there's so many ways you can be, I don't know, engineer your business to also provide income that isn't just relying on the art you create. And that's been super powerful for me to have these different pillars, such as the art, the prints, the classes. They all generate revenue.
That's awesome.
So I don't have to rely on just one.
That's beautiful. Well, again, I feel like I could talk to you all day. Any last, like, if you were talking to an artist who is not full time with art as their career, but that's their dream, what would you want to tell them?
There's a couple things. One is you can certainly be successful doing art, and you can do it full time if that's what you want to do. I also need to be mindful and maybe say this a little lightly without causing any offense, but I think artists too need to be aware of how marketable their art is. And I have seen some art where people want to create a career doing their art, but it might be really appealing to some people, but the niche of it might be incredibly narrow. So without sacrificing your creative endeavors and who you are as an artist, it is really important to make art that can be appealing to an audience. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to go over, y'all. There's just no way this is going to be an hour because we just cracked open a huge can of worms because I think a lot of artists get very precious
Yes.
about their products and like, or even just not even being willing to think of it as a product. They're like, this is my art and it's an extension of myself and it's who I am. It's like, if you want it to be a business, we have to be willing to think about an audience. And maybe you do have some work that is just for you and it's just cathartic and it's just your expression. But if your goal is to have a business, then you have an ideal client, you have a target market, you have people you're creating for, you're thinking about what those people buy and what they like, and you are willing to make things that are in conversation with those people. And I think a lot of artists do get very resistant to being willing to do that. And that's where you limit your commercial viability.
Yes, and I think there's two moves you have to make in that circumstance. You have your art, where your art can sell itself because of its marketability and its appeal. But if you're up against that wall and your art isn't, it's very specific or maybe not as appealing, then your job is now to market yourself as the artist and create a whole story and brand around the art that you do, so that when people see it, they immediately know you, they connect it with you, and they're buying you. And so both are totally viable options. I mean, Andy Warhol was a very eccentric person and had an incredible network of people. But if you think about like Campbell's soup cans, as if he were to like just kind of randomly throw that up in a gallery and nobody knew who Andy Warhol is or was, it would probably not be that appealing of a piece. And people would be like, why would I want to put Campbell's soup cans on my wall? But because he created his whole persona and brand around who he is, he could create any piece of art and people would love it.
That's a really good point. Yeah. So, that's another thing people will resist, right? Like, I don't want people to be buying me. I don't want to sell myself, right? And it's like, okay, well, you have to pick one. You either have
Yes.
commercially viable art, or you have to be willing to create a persona and sell your persona. And like, those are kind of the options. Or maybe you
Or
don't want
both.
to actually be a professional artist, and that's okay too. And I think
Yeah.
that sometimes that's a conversation that has to be had, is like, if you don't want to do any of the things that make it a business, maybe you don't want to do this professionally and you just want to make your art and like show sometimes and show in collaborative things with your friends and have a website, and like, that's totally okay. And if you want to be in business, there are some other concessions that you're either gonna have to market
Yes.
yourself or your work, but probably both.
Yes.
And that's just the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. Yes. Playing the game and then realizing the game takes a long time.
A long time, forever.
You
It never
can,
ends.
yes, and you can't give up.
Yeah.
That's my other word of wisdom.
Oh,
is understand that it takes a long time and to just keep going every day, because every
yeah.
day will get better.
I
Or
tell
it
people
should.
all the time, the first rule of business is everything takes longer than you think it's going to.
So much longer.
Anytime I'm planning anything, I estimate out how long I think it's going to take, and then I double it. And then I'm
That's
probably
gosh.
still wrong. Like, I'm like, okay, I think this project is going to take 6 months. And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to give it a year.
Yeah,
I'm wrong. Always wrong.
I know. It's true. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for this. This is so beautiful. I know that there's going to be people who have follow-up questions and want to see your work. So where can people find you?
Yeah, I would love to connect and answer any questions. I love helping artists. And my website is jamescorwin.com. You can just punch it into Google, Corwin. My social handles are James Corwin on Instagram, James Corwin on Facebook. Yeah, kind of
You're
all
fine.
over, because
Yeah.
I encourage other artists to be all over the place too.
Yeah. I love this so much. Thank you so much for this conversation. And
My
what a treat
pleasure.
it was to have you. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who listened. Let us know
Thank
if you
you.
liked this episode. We want to hear from you. You can reach out to James. You can DM me on Instagram at Intuitive Edge Coaching. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for being with us today. Kay, love you. Bye.
That's our episode for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. I know there are so many things that you could be doing with your day, so many things you could be listening to, and it means so much that you are here in this community. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment, share it on social media, and tag me at Intuitive Edge Coaching. Share it with a biz bestie who you think needs to hear it and will appreciate it. And take a moment to to subscribe, and to leave a 5-star review wherever you are listening. It helps me grow this show, and it helps us grow and sustain this brilliant community of entrepreneurs dedicated to doing the inner work. Thank you so much for being here. Kay, love you. Bye.